Our next speaker, in fact our discussant, is Jill Duggan of Doosan Babcock, who will attempt to bring some kind of order to the six wide-ranging talks that we've heard this evening so far. So, Jill, if you'd like to make yourself at home at the podium.
Thank you. Hoping that my microphone is working. I think I probably ought to tell you a little bit more about who I am. I'm an advisor to Doosan Babcock, and they are a company that supply and engineering solutions to the energy industry. But I'm not just an advisor to Doosan Babcock. I also I'm a former policy maker from DEC and DEFRA. I used to have the distinction of being head of international emissions trading for a while. And I worked at the European Commission, also on climate policy, and advised California. So what that means is that today I sit on the board of the Carbon Capture and Storage Association, the European Power Plant Suppliers Association, that mostly used to be German boiler makers, but also on the board of Sandbag, which many of you may know is a campaigning think tank organisation. And as I said, I advise Doosan Babcock. And so actually, firstly, I thought everything today was extremely interesting. And as a former policymaker, I have enormous sympathy for policymakers and trying to get it right as you develop new policies. And the need for academic thinking to help inform that is absolutely paramount. And certainly of great benefit to policymakers. But as business, we need something a little bit different. And I've been going through a very interesting process with Doosan Babcock in the last 6 months, where they have started looking forward. As I said, Doosan Babcock have been an an engineering and technology provider to the energy industry. In fact, Babcock used to make their money from selling coal boilers. They haven't actually sold coal boilers in the UK for some time now. But when I first joined them from the European Commission, a lot of them sort of said to me, well, you can't really talk about climate change, that's killing our business. And I thought, too late. But it's taken them a long time to get to the position of thinking, OK, where is the world going? How do we map that for ourselves? And this would have been enormously helpful to them. How do we map that for ourselves? How do we tell which direction it's going in the speed of travel? And what are the products and services that we're going to sell into that new world? And I've seen the same process happen actually with the European Power Plant Suppliers Association a year ago. If you talk to them about climate change, they'd come, no, keep that away from us. This year, following the divestment campaign, and the Secretariat had said, do you want us to go back on that? And no, coal is pretty much dead now, isn't it? We need to move on. So I think industry in Europe has got to a very interesting stage where they're thinking about even the most recalcitrant parts of that industry, perhaps except for the steel industry, given what's happened in the UK in the last few weeks, but looking at, OK, what is it that the world is going to look like? What does that mean for our company? Does that mean that we need to invest in innovation? Does it mean that we need to invest in changing our business models? Does it mean that we need to make acquisitions for somebody who's already done some of that innovation? And how is it that we're going to operate in that new world? One of the things that also impacts on that, of course, is policy and policy statements. And over this course of perhaps since May of this year, there have been a number of policy statements in the UK that have probably been designed by Treasury to apparently help business. In fact, if you're on the business side of this, policy statements that move away from where you thought you were going are incredibly unhelpful, even if there might be a short-term gain. If somebody told anybody, any company now, to build a new coal-fired power station in the UK, they just wouldn't do it. If they said, go ahead, you're free to do that, nobody would do that. And therefore, actually, once you know the direction of travel that you're going in, you know you're moving towards a decarbonised world, actually putting the brakes on doesn't help, really. What you need is a sense of the speed of travel and then the policies that will support that along the way. And that means that when you have policies such as the European Emissions Trading System, which has had some unfortunate experiences along the way, some of those are a symptom of success. They're not all about the downturn. Some of them are about the way that companies have responded to that policy and have changed the way they've done things and have reduced the amount of allowances they might need. So one of the other hats I wear is I also do some work for Cambridge University's Institute of Sustainability Leadership. And I did, to promote my own work, a report earlier this year where I talked to some of the companies who'd been most successful at cutting their emissions that were covered by the EU ETS to find out what it was that really happened. And obviously for the energy intensives, the carbon price is very important, but some of the most astonishing stories were those who were the less energy intensive, where when the price had hit, and it's difficult to remember now that the price of EU allowances was about 20 euros a tonne for a couple of years, that at that point a number of CEOs decided to do what it's taken Doosan Babcock and others till now to do, and say, OK, the world is going to be low carbon, what do we do about it? And start to put in place the processes, carbon teams, changing the investment framework that will help them do that, where the carbon price has actually supported everything they've done by giving them that benefit. They don't need to buy allowances, their competitors do. They actually might be able to sell allowances when they didn't think they would need to. So policies are incredibly important, but that direction of travel is probably the most important thing, which is underpinned by what is happening, the bigger macro picture of what is happening around the world. What is China doing? What is the US doing? The impact of the shale gas revolution in the US and how that is influencing policy in Europe, how it's also influencing policy more broadly across the world. One of the things that I think is most exciting about the Paris COP has actually been this move from top-down to bottom-up to INDCs. One of the reasons that's so exciting is because it's having the same impact that the more enlightened companies have had on themselves, where you look inwards and say, what is it that we are going to do? That requires information, it requires you to think about what you're going to do. And again, the global energy will help in that process of countries looking at where is it we are now, where do we want to be, what are those scenarios, and how do we get there? So I think we are really at a turning point. Yes, finance is incredibly important, but lots of things change along the way. It's interesting to remember that despite the rhetoric, and UK has been renowned for being a leader on climate change, and Poland hasn't, in 2005 they both had 2% of energy from renewable sources, or electricity generation from renewable sources, and today they have about 15% each. They've both changed in the same way, but actually if you listen to the UK government or you listen to the Polish government, you wouldn't necessarily suspect that. Similarly, one of the main debates within the COP over the years has been technology transfer. Doosan Babcock, Doosan is a Korean company. They wanted the technology, they bought it. They bought the company that owned the IPR. At the moment, we have the Chinese president visiting the UK, and I'm not sure if it's happened today, but certainly I know that the UK government are incredibly hopeful that the Chinese technology will be coming to the UK. This has changed over the last 15, 20, 30 years incredibly. So we go into the COP knowing that I think, as Jim said, that the global energy, the tectonic plates of global energy would have changed anyway, even without climate change. But we go into the COP with a new paradigm where we've got all countries looking at what they are going to do, which we've never had before. We have a wealth of experience, some of it very, very hard-won experience, and we have a real prospect of achieving something which countries and companies can build on to actually turn around their carbon footprint in a way that I think will be far better than any of us had expected. And I think I've already had my 1-minute warning, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.